On Monday, President Trump announced that the United States will impose 50% tariffs on certain Canadian goods. And here's what U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said about the motivation for that action.
In April of 2025, as you know, the president embarked on a new trade policy really designed at reshoring manufacturing production to the United States and getting the trade deficit down after exploding for decades. We imposed tariffs on all the world at varying levels. Of all the countries who retaliated against the United States, one was the People's Republic of China and the other was Canada.
So it was Canada, under the newly minted Prime Minister Mark Carney, which was the only country outside of communist China that retaliated against the United States. And Greer just called them out on it publicly. Greer's comments point to something taking shape quietly on our northern border, something that's about to make the phrase special relationship obsolete. Here's the story you're being handed. Trump slapped tariffs on Canadian goods, Mark Carney rose up as the defender of Canadian sovereignty, and the big bad United States is bullying its little neighbor. But that's not the fight. If you look at Canada as a country, you're missing the point. Mark Carney's function isn't to defend Canada. It's to rescue the globalist system from the resurgent American Republic. And this week, we saw big developments on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've tracked how the British have used this special relationship with the United States to maintain their global power since the beginning of the last century. And what I'm going to show you today is that that arrangement is quietly being replaced by something else. You're going to want to follow this, so hit that subscribe button and like and share so we can reach more people. I'm going to cover three things today. First, the command structure Carney has assembled and who's staffing it. Second, why the model the empire has run for 100 years is finished and how their own people are admitting it. And third, the reversal that almost no one has noticed, the one that points to a new operating system and a new address. So let's start with Mark Carney's reaction to the 50% tariff announcement. Carney declared Trump's actions as threats to Canadian sovereignty, and he declared that Canadians would stand together in the face of it. But a government selling itself as a defender of national sovereignty has staffed its operation with a very particular kind of person. Let's take Dominic LeBlanc. LeBlanc is the Minister for Canada-U.S. Trade, the man directing the trade negotiations with the U.S. But LeBlanc holds a second title at the same time. He is the President of King Charles' Privy Council. Let that sink in. The man handling the trade portfolio also sits at the head of the King's Privy Council in Canada. And let's not forget that King Charles is the official sovereign in Canada. Then look at who Carney just installed to run his own office. Her name is Maya Johnson. And the appointment is a first. Canada has never had a chief operating officer inside the Prime Minister's office before. So who is she? She's an American and a Democrat operative. According to the Toronto Sun, she worked with Clinton's 2016 campaign against Donald Trump. And in 2020, she worked for Michael Bloomberg's political operation, which was built to power Bloomberg's own short-lived challenge to Trump. And her relationship with Carney goes back to the green climate finance architecture that Carney was building when he was the UN's climate envoy. That same world also ties Carney to Bloomberg. Remember that. It's going to come up again later. So when Carney wanted to staff his office with a new position, he turned to an American, Maya Johnson, not Canadian talent, but globalist talent, reaching way back. Now, one more recent appointment sharpens this picture. The King's representative in Canada is the Governor General, the constitutional officer who stands in for the Crown itself. And Canada got a new one in May. Her name is Louise Arbour. Where did she come from? Her career was built inside the United Nations international legal apparatus. She was the chief prosecutor of the UN's international criminal tribunals, and from there she encouraged the creation of the International Criminal Court, the Soros-funded apparatus that was just announced by Secretary of State Marco Rubio in a special message to the American people last week.
Halfway across the world, there's an institution that calls itself the International Criminal Court. But as we speak, the ICC and its friends are waging a war against our country, not with bullets or missiles, but with statutes, compacts, and the force of so-called international law. This administration will not sit by as the ICC and its allies seek to threaten our people. If they believe they can deprive us of our sovereignty, we will teach them the full meaning of American resolve.
So the new Governor General, the King's representative, Louise Arbour, comes out of the very international legal architecture that the Secretary of State warns is a threat to our sovereignty. And here's another quick reminder. Jack Smith, the special counsel deployed against President Trump in his first term, also came out of that same ICC. So look at the team around Carney. A trade minister also heads King Charles' Privy Council, a governor general, again reporting to the Crown, who comes out of the globalist legal machinery, and an American managing the prime minister's office tied directly to the Clintons and Michael Bloomberg. That's not a coincidence, that's a pattern, and it's pointed at Donald Trump. So while the headlines focus on the trade fight between the United States and Canada, Promethean action is pulling back the curtain on this deeper fight, the one between the United States reasserting its sovereignty against those imperial structures. If you want to follow that fight, subscribe to our free newsletter. The link is in the description. Now, having a president and an administration that actually fights for American sovereignty is something we haven't seen much of in recent decades. And that's what makes this fight different. And that's why the empire is going back to the drawing board in terms of how to handle the United States. For months now, the House of Lords and the empire's other mouthpieces, like Chatham House in London and the CFR here in the United States, have been admitting that the special relationship is, well, not so special anymore. On July 15th, Chatham House convened another of its America at 250 panels to address this new geometry. And this one was entitled Trade versus Protectionism, America's Enduring Economic Debate. And in the course of admitting that the pre-Trump world of unbridled free trade is over and not coming back, one of the panelists spilled the beans on how Americans used to view free trade in the 19th century. This is what Chatham House fellow Heather Hurlburt said.
As late as the 1890s, American politicians were equating protectionism with patriotism. The Speaker of the House said, "I am an American and therefore I am a protectionist." And not only that, if you were a free trader, you could be accused of being pro-British.
Did you catch that? From the podium at London's Chatham House came the admission that being in favor of free trade meant you were pro-British, because free trade was the British system. That's Chatham House admitting what was written out of American history for 100 years. But Hurlburt wasn't finished.
And really, because there's nothing new under the sun, McKinley, before he was elected president, championed a tariff that some members of Congress hoped would squeeze Canada so hard it would agree to be annexed to the United States.
Hurlburt says this isn't new. Well, maybe it's not new to President Trump either. It was in a discussion with Justin Trudeau about canceling NAFTA back in 2024, when Trudeau responded that that would destroy Canada. That's when Trump first talked about Canada becoming the 51st state. And it's not new to Mark Carney, which is why Carney is the point person for setting up a different relationship with the United States. In early June, the Wall Street Journal published an extensive article profiling Carney's new role. It was entitled, "The Canadian Who Steered Europe Away from the US." And it reports on the difference between then British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Carney. When Starmer, at the recent G20 summit, said that the West had to salvage its relationship with America, Carney's answer was, "We don't have a relationship to keep." The empire knows that as long as Donald Trump is president, there's no point trying to massage the special relationship, which is why the public address for managing imperial policy toward the United States has, for now, shifted away from London. So go back to that G20 summit where Starmer was still trying to save Britain's relationship with the United States. Starmer was already out of the loop. Carney was already working with Andy Burnham months before Burnham became Britain's new prime minister this week. Here's what that same Wall Street Journal article said back on July 7th. Carney's team has been quietly pitching his ideas to the UK's likely next prime minister, Andy Burnham, whose chief economic advisor was once Carney's Bank of England deputy. So let's look at that economic advisor. His name is Andy Haldane, and he was Carney's chief economist when Carney was the head of the Bank of England. He served directly under Carney. And now he's helping shape the economy of the new British government. But it isn't only Carney's people who got to Burnham early. So did Michael Bloomberg. Here's how Burnham himself described it back when he was mayor of Manchester. I've been a partner to Bloomberg Philanthropies since my first year as mayor, and our region has benefited enormously as a result. Now remember, Bloomberg is no ordinary billionaire. He's the Democrat face of the oligarchy, the Wall Street financier who spent billions of his own money to run against Donald Trump in 2020. And Bloomberg's partnership with Carney goes back a decade. In 2015, it was Carney, then running the Bank of England, who tapped Bloomberg to help write the global rules for imposing green policies through climate finance. And that project is also where Carney recruited Maya Johnson, who now has that new position in the Prime Minister's office. So look at all of these figures: Bloomberg, Haldane, Johnson, and of course Carney. This is the Davos world of financial and climate technocrats, the world that treats sovereign nations as things to be managed from above. And it used to run through London. Its center of gravity is now Carney. And Burnham, the new prime minister, is just a subset of this new policy configuration. And you can see it in one last detail. When Carney recently unveiled his Canadian-led defense bank in Ankara, Turkey, Britain, still under Starmer, declined to participate. With Carney's networks already positioned around Burnham, it now looks like that decision is being reconsidered, and Britain may join Carney's new institution. Put this all together, and here's what you get. The empire is writing a new operating manual, and for now, it's being run from Ottawa, not London. So let's go back to Donald Trump's tariff announcement and Jameson Greer's observation about Canada being only one of two countries to retaliate against the United States. Canada, as in Mark Carney's Canada. Carney isn't defending Canada from Donald Trump. He's at the center of the empire's new operating system for dealing with the United States. No more special relationship, rather an open attempt to confront the United States and to try and stop Donald Trump, economically and strategically. But the empire has a problem, and it's the same problem they've had for more than a century and a half. As long as the United States uses the American system to protect and advance its industry and its economic sovereignty, the imperial system is no match. That's why McKinley's proposed tariff policies threatened to bring Canada under the United States way back in the 19th century. Carney and the empire hope they can weaken Donald Trump and prevent the continuation of his policies beyond his presidency. That won't happen if Americans understand and back the president's economic revolution. If you want to be part of that, join Promethean Action as a supporting member or a contributor. This has been your Midweek Update. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.